Hi there, Jonathan here. The following talk is offered freely to ensure that no one is ever denied access to these practices and to these teachings. If you feel inspired to make a donation to support this offering, you can go to my website where you can also sign up for a monthly newsletter designed to support you in your practice. That's at www.jonathanfoust.com. Thank you and enjoy. I usually like to start off a talk with a joke or a humorous story. But I think apropos to tonight's talk, I got an email from a friend of mine that I wanted to share with you. And I'll call him Craig because that's his real name. And Craig left kind of the executive corporate world. And in his exploration, one of his passions has become being a doula, sitting with people who are dying. And in particular, he sits with people who are dying who have no family, have no one around. He lives in Baltimore. So he sends me these updates of what it's like. And he was sick with a bad cold, so he he couldn't go in for a week. So this is what he wrote. He said, "I've been away. I skipped just one Monday in my Monday-Friday routine, and now all my friends and acquaintances are gone. Seeing the names on the roster gone and replaced reminds me of how the river flows. All of us in it, soon to flow to the vast sea. Celeste is 57, tall and thin with long brown hair. She's in the throes of the process now. I hold her hand for a moment. I'm right here with you, sweetheart. I'll be right by your side. It's so real, so immediate. So many plans dissipated. And so we sit and we wait, alone together. The woods are white outside her door, and to my delight, I watch a fox trotting by with his breakfast. Seems it was the mouse's day to go, too. The doctor and nurse come in to monitor and ensure comfort, and we chat and smile and feel and share this tangible compassion in the air. Love, fate, and connectedness abound. I fix her pillows and move back to Celeste's side. She is facing me directly now, with the face in the final stages. This is traditionally the time of year when we ask ourselves, well, what are my goals? What's next for me? And I always do my traditional annual report where I ask myself as I look back, what worked, what didn't work, what am I focusing on now? But when you ask yourself what you really want, when you set an intention, I find that email from Craig to be very helpful. Because the question really is, knowing you are destined to die, how do you want to live? What's most important? So this talk is called Starting Again, how to refresh your intention and your attention. And just as in that meditation, you have an intention to be present. And of course, you see how unbelievably neurotic your mind is, all the little rat holes it goes down, and you notice and you start again. And that is so much a part of the practice, is embracing the starting again. If you could imagine yourself a year from now, sitting in the same exact seat, how would you want to feel about this year as you reflect back? an interesting inquiry. And that is, if you reflect on what most enlivens you in your life right now, and if you were to pursue and nurture that, where might that take you in a year? Knowing what you want is so important. It's your direction, it's your focus, it's what you come back to. Ramana Maharshi, the great sage of India, said there are two questions, and if you live into these two questions sincerely and intently, they will reveal your true nature. The first one is, what are you? When you ask that question, it takes you beyond the mind. But the second question is, what do you really, really want? And if you stay in that question, it's like peeling an onion. And you begin to sense that, like the deepest desire at the core of who you are, knowing you're going to die, how do you want to live? Sorting out what you want from the human needs can be kind of tricky. A couple models for human needs I find really helpful. Tony Robbins has this great thing of naming the 6 human needs. One is we have a need for stability and certainty. But we also have a need for variety. A little paradoxical. We have a need for significance, a need for connection and love. We have a need for growth and a need to feel like we're a contribution. And positive psychology has another filter, which is a great way to reflect on what you want in your life. It's the acronym of PERMA, P-E-R-M-A. You want to cultivate positive emotions. You want to be engaged in your life. You want positive relationships. And you want meaning. You want your life to mean something. And you also want a sense of accomplishment, a sense of moving towards something and the satisfaction that comes from getting better at it. So articulating what you want is very, very helpful, to take that time to really articulate what it is you want. It's really tough. There are different points in my life where I've taken some pretty intense vows. I took a celibacy vow in my 20s, which was brutal, but quite revealing. I've taken a poverty vow, kind of at that same time. I took a vow of service. And my wedding vows were a very intense reflection for me. What is it that I want to declare in my marriage? And where Tara and I arrived was, we took that as our opportunity to take the Bodhisattva vows, which are kind of the vows that have a commitment to awakening and service. So how we articulated that for ourselves is, may whatever arise serve the awakening of heart and mind and be of benefit to all beings. And burning that intention in was very, very helpful. A number of times I'd find myself in our relationship really hurt and angry and all that stuff. And then I remembered my vow. May whatever arise serve the awakening of heart and mind and be a benefit to all beings. What a reframe. What a helpful reframe. So the question is, what is it you really want? What do we want? As far as I can tell, I think what I really, really want is to be happy no matter what the externals are. To cultivate a quality of steadiness that's present no matter what's happening. And along the way, we have our goals. We have the external things we want to accomplish. But for me, that's kind of the set point. I have an affliction, a condition called techno-lust. I love cameras and lenses and technology and stuff like that. And the other day, I came back from being on the river, on my boat, and I set my cameras on the kitchen counter. And one of them was a camera I just got, which is kind of a micro Four Thirds. If you're interested, a Panasonic Lumix GX85 with 5-axis image stabilization. It's killer. But I set it on the counter, and our cute little dog kind of put her paws up on the counter, as she does. She's kind of, to sniff what I brought in, and her paw got caught in the strap of the camera. And so she pulled it off, and the camera, my brand new camera, fell about 4 feet right on the corner. It bounced a couple times. And so it became this Zen Pop quiz for me. And there are two things I'm really happy about. The first thing is, it didn't really disturb me. It wasn't anyone's fault. I certainly couldn't blame my little cute puppy dog. And I was really pleased. Wow, I actually have a kind of a sense of equanimity here. The second thing I noticed was a feeling of very deep appreciation for the Panasonic Lumix Corporation for making a camera that didn't break. So remembering intention is so helpful. To take the time to clarify that for yourself. So when you identify what you really, really want, that's helpful. Lock that in. And then it brings up another question, which is the fact that it's not just what you really, really want. It's then what are you willing to give up to get it? How much do you really, really want it? So there's a story we used to tell ourselves back when I was in the ashram and we all had celibacy vows. We looked for any way we could keep ourselves inspired. If you can imagine 300 people in their 20s and 30s trying to be celibate. We worked a lot, we worked out a lot, we ate a lot. But this is the story of Saint Tulsidas. And it's the story when Tulsidas was a young man. There was a girl in another village that he was obsessed with, just madly in love with. And one night, he realized he could not get through the night without seeing her. So he put on his best white clothes and he took off from his village to her village. And he had to go through a forest, and he had to kind of wade across a creek. And there was also, we forgot, there was a swamp he had to navigate through. So kind of a grueling thing in the middle of the night, crawling through the woods and through the swamp. And he got to her house and he climbed up into this tree near her bedroom, and he called out to her. And she came to the window and looked out and saw this mud-covered wild man with wild hair and wild eyes. And she said to him, "If you love God as much as you love me, you'd be enlightened by now." And according to the story, he said, "Hey, you're right," and went off and got enlightened. So, good story to remember when you're trying to be celibate. So when you think of something you want, then the question is, how much do you really want it? What are you willing to give up to get it? Recently, I was reading an article about goal setting, and this writer made a very interesting point that when you create a goal for yourself, what you're really doing is you're choosing your pain. Because if you want something and don't have it, there's a cost to get it. There's going to be some level of sacrifice that you're going to have to make in order to manifest that. And I think it's really, really helpful to reflect on that. And one of the things I love about kind of practicing through this lens of Buddhist psychology or Buddhist philosophy is that This is a reality-based practice. There's not a lot of room for daydreaming, although daydreaming can be creative and very helpful, but it's not the final refuge. So I thought I would share something with you. It's a little autobiographical, but it's something that's kind of alive for me. It kind of speaks to my own contemplation as to what do I want and what's the pain I'm choosing in order to get it. And for years now, I've been talking about a writing project, about writing a book. I was an English major, a composition major in college, and I know that I'm a good enough writer to realize and know without a doubt that I'm not a great writer. And it's something that I really I enjoy, but it hasn't been a passion for me. When I was in college, I worked as a stringer, as a photographer for a newspaper. I went to college in southern Wisconsin, and I was a stringer for the Rockford Register-Star, which is the largest newspaper in Illinois next to the Chicago Tribune at that time. So I'd get sent on an assignment, and I really loved it to be the photographer, try to tell the story visually, and then I would come back and put my film on a Greyhound bus, and I'd go back, and then they would print it, and they would send me a check. And back at that time, the checks they sent me were a lot of money for that time. And I kind of loved, working in the visual arts and trying to tell stories visually. But there was one day when there was someone in my class who was working as an intern, as a writer at the paper. And as I was heading out, on an assignment, I remember the guy who was managing that little newspaper said to this fellow, he said, "Look," he said, "you did it wrong. You buried the lead. You got to write it again." And I remember hearing that and thinking, like, he's really sacrificing to become a better writer. And I'm not paying my dues, At the same time, I enjoy writing, and this idea of writing a book is very appealing. However, I also live with a woman who's written 2 books, who's working on her 3rd, and I know the blood, sweat, and tears that go into it. So I know that if I say yes to what I want, or what I think I want, there's a price that I have to pay. I'm going to have to find allies who will support me, find people who are smarter than me to critique my work, to get honest feedback, and put in the intense work that goes into writing. So the question is, if this is what I want, what am I willing to give up to get it? And it's a very powerful way to refine your intention. I've noticed for myself that, like many people, I wish I had written a book in the past. So when you know what you want, when you have a sense of what the cost is, again, this is reality-based. You then have to ask yourself, well, what is my weakest link? What do I have to pay attention to in order to manifest that? So I do a process every year, my annual report, which I put out. And I ask myself 3 questions: what worked, what didn't work, and then what's calling me now. And if you take the time, I really recommend you take the time to reflect on this, because there's so much to celebrate when you really look back. For myself, when I look back, my home is wonderful. My health has been really good this year. What I'm doing and speaking and teaching is really just fun and creative and engaging. And my offering my podcast to the world has been kind of fun. There are over 600,000 downloads, and being creative and simplifying and savoring, and then looking at what didn't work And again, being real about it. Realizing that I still stink at marketing. I really don't have any financial skill whatsoever. And every year I go through the pre-tax freak out. You know, the photography exhibit that I was going to do, it's not quite ready yet. So maybe just to offer a little reflection, for you to reflect on these 3 questions. If you like, you can close your eyes. When you just center yourself into the breath, you might just take 3 slow, deep breaths and bring yourself present. And I find it helpful to think of the different roles that you play in your life. And when you reflect back over this last year, what worked? What are you grateful for in this last year? What successes did you have? And as you reflect back over this last year, what didn't work? What feels undone? Can you detect any dissatisfaction over this last year? And when you reflect on now, on this breath, what calls you in this year ahead? What enlivens you? A question that can be helpful to prompt that is, if you were assured of success, what would you do? And then again, when you're ready, you can deepen your breath. And if you like, you can let your eyes open, or you can remain with them closed. There's something real about naming what didn't work, kind of naming where the weak link is. There's this myth that if you go to school and get your MBA, you're going to be turned out as this perfect business person. And there's someone who I studied with who talked about what a myth that is. And talked about how in any given business or just through personality, there are 4 basic types. There's the entrepreneur, the one who's sort of visionary and kind of gets things started. There's the administrative type, who's really takes satisfaction in organizing and creating rules and getting things done. There's the integrator. There's the one who's very more people-based and really more focused on the culture and creating harmony. And then the producer. They're those, they just like to work. They just want to get engaged. They just love accomplishing things. And the idea that we're just this perfect being that can do all these things perfectly is really kind of a myth. And part of his teaching is find out what you're really, really good at. Are you someone who's kind of visionary, likes to make things happen, but maybe your weak link is actually making them happen? Are you someone who's a really good organizer, but you need a vision to help sync up with? Are you someone who really loves creating a really helpful culture and likes to belong? Are you someone who just really likes just getting things done, that isn't so concerned about a vision, but just wants to know where you're going and put your wheel to the grindstone? And really what he says is the real skill is when you find out what you're really good at, surround yourself with the people who balance you out. A good friend of mine was a doctor and has a clinic here locally. We were having dinner. He said, "Hey, let me save you $20,000." So I've spent at least $20,000 on these entrepreneurial workshops. He said, "This is the bottom line. Figure out what you do best and don't do anything else. Find people whose skills balance you out." It's really helpful. And so I have come to recognize that when it comes to managing my finances, I'm hopeless. So this year, I'm finding someone who's going to help me do that. I'm really excited. We're meeting tomorrow at 12:15. And when it comes to this writing project, and I feel like I'm 90% there, what I really have to ask myself is, okay, what do I need to really make that happen? So when you determine where you want to go, and the Buddha talks about this a lot, particularly if what you really want is to be awake in this life, if you want to cultivate your capacity for happiness no matter what the externals, you're swimming upstream. You're swimming against your own conditioning, and you're swimming against the entire culture. So it requires real particular effort. As one of my teachers said, extraordinary results require extraordinary means. So now I can imagine what it would feel like to have my finances in order by aligning with someone who does that really well and actually enjoys it. And I can imagine working on a book that's going to progress naturally when I align myself with the people who can kind of shepherd me through that process. And so this really leads to kind of the final point I'd like to explore. So it's knowing what you really, really want, having a sense of what you're willing to give up to get it, the pain you're choosing to get it, being realistic about your weakest link. And that is really about how you take action. Practicing kind of the radical self-care and putting in the radical support that you need. That's going to move you forward. From kind of if we look at just through the lens of spiritual practice, there are three things that are very helpful when you're cultivating awakening heart and mind. And one of them is a daily practice, just a way of remembering what's most important in a daily discipline. Times of intensive retreat where you can step back and immerse yourself. And then being around like-minded people. Being around people who want what you want. And when you have that kind of locked in, it's very, very helpful. It kind of moves you forward. That's why when I went to an ashram for lunch, I looked around and I stayed for 24 years. It was built in. It was really built in. So it's very helpful to reflect on your goals and then the systems that are going to support you. James Clear is a really wonderful writer, and he talks about, think of it in terms of the boat and the oars. There's knowing what you want, and then the systems that are going to support you. So if you're wanting to cultivate more mindfulness or more non-judging awareness, that's the boat. And then what are the oars? What is it you'll do as a daily practice? What's the support that's going to keep that going? And what are the retreats that you'll do that are going to keep you inspired and keep you on that learning edge that'll keep you moving? What kind of shift could you make in your lifestyle that would align you with people who are going to inspire you? And so for me, I recognize that if I'm going to write this book, I'm going to need a system. I'm going to have to figure that out. I'm going to have to figure out who are my allies, who are the people who are going to support me. I got to find someone really smart, who can help me get organized and isn't going to be afraid to get real with me around what I have to generate. And one way to think of your path, and I really love this, your personal dharma, is to think of it in terms of what you can't not do. And I've come to recognize for myself, in terms of writing this book, as I've gone back and forth, because I know the price that goes into it. The question that we all have to ask ourselves is why? Why do you want what you want? The why leads to a sense of passion. And so, again, just personally, why would I want to write this book? It's not for money, because there's really no money in writing books these days. For fame or recognition. If you look at the history of people who write, that's not a really good motivation. So I did just as a little reflection, I did a little Google search on people who didn't become famous until after they were dead. So El Greco, the painter and sculptor, Galileo, no one had a clue. Henry David Thoreau, Emily Dickinson, Franz Kafka, Vincent van Gogh, Gwendolyn Schmedlap. Actually, I have no idea who Gwendolyn Schmedlap is. But there's a why that lights me up. I got to the why for myself. And the why is, this might be helpful. This might really help someone. And that's enough to spark it for me. So, a little reflection, if you will. Again, you might bring yourself back to the breath. And you might bring into mind just one thing that you might like to do this next year. One goal that you have. And again, you're not committing to it here, but you're just trying this on. And you might kind of tap into that future self. Think a year from now, looking back. And you might reflect on these questions. So what is it that you really want? What is the outcome you would like? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to sacrifice in order to manifest this? And what is your weakest link? Which leads to the question, what kind of support would you need? What kind of system would you have to put in place to make this happen? And then just to reflect, why do you want this? And you might just imagine if what you want was already here, fully realized, what would that feel like on the inside? What would that be like? And then if you like, you can let your eyes open once again. just as in meditation, you start again. You start with an intention to be fully present. And you know that part of the practice is about becoming aware of how you're not present. So anytime you engage into a practice, there is the recognition that you have to embrace this quality of starting again. To come back, to refresh your intention, and then to begin again. There's this quality of knowing what you want and then realigning around it. So these questions can be so helpful. What do you really want? How much do you want it? What are you willing to give up? And what kind of radical support system is going to help you move forward? And I find it to be helpful even if you have specific goals or if your goal is around cultivating a greater sense of peace in this world, no matter what the externals. Why don't we close with a short reflection? And I have one of my favorite readings to share with you. You might just take 3 slow, deep breaths, just in these final minutes together. There's a poem from my friend Dana Falls that speaks beautifully to what it means to start again. It only takes a reminder to breathe, a moment to be still. And just like that, something in me settles, softens, makes space for imperfection. The harsh voice of judgment drops to a whisper, and I remember again that life isn't a relay race, that we will all cross the finish line, that waking up to life is what we were born for. As many times as I forget and catch myself charging forward without even knowing where I'm going, that many times I can make the choice to stop, to breathe, and be, and walk slowly into the mystery. And as you're ready, deepening the breath. And when you're ready, you can let your eyes open. Thanks for your kind attention to my rant of the evening. A few announcements before we close. First, if you'd like to be on the mailing list and you're not, you can sign up in the back. Second, just to let you know that in March, I will be starting the next Year of Living Mindfully program, which is a 12-month program. I'll send out a little more information there. But I see we have a number of survivors of the program here. In another week, we'll maybe have a time if you'd like to talk to anyone who's done it. But that information will be out there. I also want to take a moment to, I meant to do this last time, but I really wanted to acknowledge really what makes this class happen. And it's primarily just to thank Bob and Mike and our wonderful greeter over here, and just those who helped to make this class happen. Thank you so much. And also to Barb for your support as well. Your support keeps this class going. Your donations go to the church, and they support me and IMCW, so I thank you for that as well. The final question is, how much do you really, really want a cookie? How badly do you want that cookie? And how quickly can you get out the lobby to get your cookie? So, thanks so much. Have a great night. I'll see you next week.